seminar talking a little bit about nearshore and offshore fishing and some fishing tips and tricks for the Gulf of Mexico. Now, we are going to be giving away a free 5-hour half day and a free 10-hour all day. So if you haven't got a ticket, you can come on up and grab a raffle ticket from me. My name's Capt Dylan Hubbard from Hubbard's Marina. Hubbard's Marina is located right beside John's Pass at Madeira Beach. We do 5, 10, 12, 39, 44 to 63-hour party boat fishing trips. We have 4 custom-built private charter fishing vessels. We can do any type of fishing from the beach out past 1,000 foot of water. Anything you guys want to go catch in the Gulf of Mexico, we have a trip out Hubbard's Marina to go get. So today we're going to be talking about a little bit of everything, more about our spring and summertime fishery. And if you guys have any questions, let me know. Before we started up, we had a question about red snapper. Red snapper should open June 1st for federally permitted for-hire vessels. That's our for-hire recreational anglers. That season will run until the quota is full. Right now, the last National League Fisheries meeting, they were talking about a 50 to 52-day season. So the season should last till about July 20 and July 21st. However, we have in the private recreational industry or sector, we have what's called EFPs, or exempted fishing permits, coming. Those EFPs will allow the 5 Gulf states to manage not only their state waters, but also the federal waters for red snapper. So what that will mean is the state of Florida will control not only the first 9 miles, but they'll control all the way to 200 miles for red snapper. The state of Florida FWC is talking about providing around a 25, 26-day season. That will be split up into a peninsula season and a panhandle season. They're talking about the panhandle season opening first and running about 10 to 13 days, and then the peninsular season opening right after consecutively, and that would again run about 2 weeks or so. So for private recreational anglers on your own boat, you're looking at about a 2-week season here in the peninsula and a 2-week season in the panhandle. On a private or on a for-hire vessel with federal permits like a charter boat or head boat, we should have about 50 days or so. But Texas and Louisiana are trying to power grab, trying to get more red snapper for their states by including their federally permitted for-hire vessels in their EFPs. If that happens, that could rob about 4 weeks of red snapper from the state of Florida, Alabama, and Mississippi on the charter boats and party boats. So really important, if you fish a charter boat or a party boat, you want to go get red snapper this year, really important that Texas and Louisiana does not include their federally permitted for-hire vessels in their EFPs, or it's going to steal red snapper days away from you guys, and away from me. So hopefully that does not happen. We have all the information to make a comment. You can grab my card after and I can email you that information. Or you can go to the Fishermen United Facebook page that I run, and all that information's on there as well. Does that answer your question about red snapper? Very cool. Now, I know I had a few more people walk up, so if you want to come on up and grab a raffle ticket. So today we're going to do this a little bit more like a fishing conversation. I stole this idea from Cap Mike Anderson. It worked pretty well. So if you guys have any questions, I'd love to talk with you instead of talking at you. So I'm going to go over a few things real quick, and then after that I'll take questions. And hopefully you guys have a lot of questions. We can roll a seminar like that. So first things first, as far as what's going on now. It's late March, we're coming into April. Right now is the best time of year for hogfish. Hogfish is best in March and April. That's when it's kind of at its peak, but you can't catch hogfish all year long. Also, we have kingfish and mackerel running. The spring kingfish and mackerel run was in full swing. We had a really early spring, right? We got really warm, really fast. February was the hottest month. Hottest February we've had on record since they started keeping records. So we were blessed to have an early spring mackerel and kingfish run. They started much earlier than normal. Then we got some late season cold fronts that kind of slowed things down. We had that front last week, but this past weekend it cleared up, calmed down, warmed up, and those mackerel and kingfish were ready to chew again. Then we had that another big front this past Tuesday, Wednesday, and it kind of messed things up again. But just today, the fishing has really started to pick up. Behind those fronts, once the water calms down, the wind calms down, the pressure stabilizes, the water starts clearing up and warming up, and the fishing picks up very quickly. Because those fish haven't fed for those 3 or 4 or 5 days behind that big blow. So when these cold fronts roll through, it's always best to fish right up until that cold front, and then always best to wait a few days, wait for the water temperatures to start coming back up, water to calm down, clear up, and that's when the fishing picks up. So this afternoon, tomorrow, should be awesome fishing. If you guys want to get out and go do some fishing, strongly encourage you to go out tomorrow. It'll be a great day, and it should be some awesome fishing too. Besides kingfish, mackerel, hogfish, the snapper species, mangrove snapper, yellowtail snapper, lane snapper, they're gearing up for their spawn right now. Snapper species spawn in the warmer summer months. June, July is a great time to go snapper fishing. August, September, once it gets really hot, they kind of level out and they get a little bit finicky, especially during the day because the air is so hot, water's so hot. You get that midday doldrums type thing. So I like fishing for snapper end of May, June, July. It's a great opportunity to go catch lots of big snapper species. Besides that, red grouper. We have this deep water grouper closure right now called a 20-fathom closure. A lot of confusion about what that means. That 20-fathom closure is every year in February and March the last couple of years. And what it means is red grouper are closed beyond 20 fathoms during those months. 20 fathoms equates to 120 feet of water. So past 120 feet of water, red grouper, scamp grouper, the whole shallow water grouper complex is closed. However, inside of that, we've been able to keep red grouper this whole time. Now, the red grouper bite hasn't been that great, but it's just starting to pick up for us. And as that deep water closure ends, we'll be able to go out there and get it because they've been biting really well in about 130 to about 150 foot. And as the water warms up, those red grouper come in and the gag grouper push out. Gag grouper come closer to shore when the water's cool. Red grouper come closer to shore when the water gets hot. Alright, the best months for gag grouper are always ending in ER. September, October, November, December. The best time for gag grouper all year round is always around Thanksgiving. I don't know what it is, maybe they like turkey, but every year around Thanksgiving, gag grouper fishing's at its best. Any questions? I don't want to sit up here and talk all the time. What's your question back there, buddy? I can't hear you. What did he say? Why are fish so big? I don't know. They get really big at Hubbard's Marina too. What's up? Best bait for mackerel. That's a good question. Mackerel fishing is a lot of fun. You can catch mackerel right from the shore, the jetties, the passes. The Skyway Bridge is a great area to get mackerel. My favorite thing for mackerel is just to cruise up and down the beaches, trolling. When you're trolling for mackerel, the best bait for them is just a #1 planer, really easy to use, and then a trolling spoon or a mackerel spoon. This combination allows you to get a bunch of mackerel and maybe even a few kingfish easily. With the planer, how that thing works, got one right here. How this thing works is you tie your main line to this little ring, and that ring rides up and down this rail. So you tie your main line to the ring, then you tie your leader to this. Typically you put a snap swivel here because your spoon's back there spinning. So you want a snap swivel, and then you want about 15 to 18 feet between your planer and your spoon. Then what you do is you set it out, and it sets out like this, and it skips along the top of the water, and then you give your line some slack by lifting up your rod tip, and then quickly lowering your rod tip. And what that does is that sets this ring here. And then that planer is going to pull that spoon under the water. And when a mackerel or kingfish hits the spoon, it resets it and brings the planer brings the fish to the surface. So a planer and spoon is a great way to target mackerel from a boat. You can do that from a little John boat, a little skiff. You don't need a big boat. Just cruise right 15 to 20 out to about 40 feet. You'll find plenty of mackerel and kingfish. I like looking for birds, crab traps. Artificial wrecks are a great area to start. Madeira Beach Reef's only 3 miles from shore. You can get out there real easy. Typically there's bait there. There's typically plenty of mackerel too. From shore, for mackerel, what I would use is, my favorite lure for mackerel is the gotcha plugs. They work really, really well. You can cast them a long distance. Mackerel are a very fast, reactionary feeder. So whenever you're fishing for mackerel, you want to reel really quickly. So you want to cast out as far as you can, let that sink to the bottom, and then just retrieve really quickly. Every now and again, I'll pause for a second, twitch my rod, and continue reeling pretty fast. Now, typically from a boat, we're trolling for mackerel anywhere from about 6 to 7 knots, maybe even 9 knots. So that equates to almost 10 miles an hour. So when you're casting that gotcha plug out there, and you're reeling back, you can reel as fast as 10 miles an hour, which would be pretty difficult. So when I say real fast, I mean real fast when you cast out there for the mackerel. But any of the piers, Golf Pier, the Bay Pier, DeSoto, the Skyway Pier, one of my favorite areas for mackerel is right along the Johns Pass Sea Buoy, about 100 yards off the Reddington Long Pier, or just off of Blinds Pass, about a mile or two. Is a great area to start from mackerel. That answer your question? His question was about nighttime snapper fishing. We do have a 12-hour nighttime snapper fishing trip at Hubbard's Marina. We have one last night. It leaves Friday night at 7 p.m. and it comes back Saturday morning at 7 a.m. The nighttime snapper fishing is a great opportunity to get some of those mangroves, lane snapper, yellowtail snapper, vermilion snapper, porgies, a bunch of those heads and tails as well, and maybe even a scamp grouper or two. We do those starting late March all the way through till September. And they're Friday nights around the full moon. They're not every Friday. We don't typically run them on the new moon. Typically quarter moons and a full moon is when we offer those night snapper fishing trips. But it's $129. You get about 7 to 8 hours fishing time, about 25 to 35 miles from shore. A great way to target mangroves is with a high-speed or a 2-speed 4-aught reel, or a large spinning reel like a 5,000 or 6,000 series spinning reel. Mangrove snapper are one of my favorite fish to target. The person who can sit there and catch mangrove snapper consistently and often is one of the best anglers on the boat. The mangrove snapper are very fat, very smart, very quick biting, intelligent fish. It really takes a lot of luck or skill and practice to make sure that you're dialing in on those mangroves. So I really enjoy mangrove snapper fishing myself. The rig you guys saw me tying up, this double snell rig is a must. If you're going out snapper fishing, you gotta have one of these double snell rigs. We have a video on our YouTube channel. You can just look up on YouTube Hubbard's Marina, and there's a video I did about how to tie this double snell rig. It's very, very easy to tie, very simple to do. With these double snell hooks, it basically allows you to put 2 hooks into one piece of bait, and it allows you to really dial in on those mangrove snapper really easily. I'll show you real quick how I prepare my bait for those mangroves. So typically for mangrove snapper, I would be using either live shrimp on a single hook rig, like a knocker rig style setup. But if a mangrove snapper bite's going really well, I would use a sardine or a thread fin, and I would use what's called the sardine or thread fin plug. So how you prepare that one is simply taking your thread fin, cutting off the head, cutting off the tail. So now you've got just a big old chunk of meat. And then with this thread fin, because the bait is so thick, I then cut out the belly as well. So that just leaves me a nice big old thick chunk of meat, and you can tell the body or belly cavity has been opened up, so it allows a lot of smell in the water. Another trick to use when you're fishing for mangrove snapper is brining your bait. When you brine your bait, it allows that bait to get a lot firmer. The outside of the bait gets a little stiffer, and the inside of the bait stays juicier. To brine your bait, you would cut up a bunch of these plugs and get them ready. And then you take a little small cooler, just one of those 6-pack coolers that just barely holds a 6-pack. You put a thin layer of ice, you layer in this bait, just one layer of bait, then you heavily salt it, and then you repeat. Another small layer of ice, another layer of bait, another heavy layer of salt. You repeat until your cooler is full. And that's called brining your bait. Works very well for mangrove snapper. Typically like on a 39-hour or on a 44-hour, they would do that on the ride out to prepare for the trip. And especially in the state of Florida during the summer, it gets so hot during the day. That cooler, once you prepared it, you can leave it in the sun. By the time you start fishing, a lot of that ice is melted, and you've got this like reddish brown sardine blood juice that's full of salt. It really works well to prepare a nice bait. There's other methods to brining bait. Some guys will just fill the cooler about halfway up with salt water, add more salt, and then put a little bit of ice, and then just dump the bait in there. I've seen that work. Everybody has their favorite method. I prefer the method I just described, but on a night snapper trip, when I know it's not going to get hot enough to melt that ice, I'd add a couple cups of salt water in there to speed up that process and melt that ice. But as far as rigging this bait, you've got your double snell rig. This bottom hook is going to be the top hook as you go down the bottom. So this bottom hook, the very first hook, I'm going to go put on the skinnier side of the bait. So I'm going to start that first hook, always perpendicular to the backbone. That backbone is right between that silver and blue line. Then I put the tip of the hook underneath the backbone, out the other side of the bait, and then I turn the hook shank parallel with the backbone. The second hook goes in just about a quarter of an inch up from the top eye of that first hook. Again, perpendicular to the backbone, out the other side of the bait, and then I turn it parallel. So I've got a really nice profile, supernatural looking, clean piece of bait. And you'll notice the thicker end is up here, so the thinner end is up here, so as this goes to the bottom, it's going to go to bottom very nicely. It's not going to spin, there's no drag. It's very hydrodynamic because as this rockets the bottom, your bait gets up near your main line. And if you're not hooking your bait properly, as it comes closer to your main line, it's going to spin and tangle up your main line. And then by the time you get to bottom, you've got a big old tangled mess. And no mangrove snapper are going to get near it. So preparing that bait in the proper way to make sure, to make sure that you have a really nice natural presentation works really well, and ensures that when you get to the bottom, you're going to have a nice, clean looking, natural looking setup. Because to get those mangrove snapper to bite, it's got to look natural. It's got to appear to not be bait hook, you know. So fluorocarbon is a great way to fool them. And then you don't need very big hooks. If I'm fishing a 12-hour night trip, I'd be using like 4 or 5-aught hooks. If I'm fishing like a 39-hour where I'm out a little deeper, I'd be using probably around a 5 or 6-aught hook. But the double snell is always the preferred method to target those mangroves. Did I answer your question? Good question. As far as circle hooks, what the rule is when you're bottom fishing for reef species using natural bait, you must use circle hooks. That's the law. When I am personally fishing, I use a little bit different techniques, but when I'm fishing on the boat, if you rented a rod from me, I have to provide circle hooks because that's the law. So if you go fishing with the Hubbard's Marina, you're going to get circle hooks because that's the law. Personally, in my personal tackle box, when I'm going for fish like red grouper, red snapper, amberjack, something that's going to come up and swallow the bait and run, I would use circle hooks. That's the preferred method. When I'm fishing for something that's going to come up and nibble at the bait and I have to set the hook quickly, I personally, on my personal tackle, prefer to use J-hooks. The idea behind that rule that was made was to ensure you use circle hooks because they want you to get the fish back into the water quickly, and it reduces the amount of dead discards, which is when you catch a fish, release it, and it dies. So in order to try to minimize the amount of dead discards, that circle hook rule was invented, which we obey, we have no problem with. But in my opinion, it's BS. Because when you're using a circle hook or a J hook, it doesn't matter. If you use the proper tools, it's going to get that fish back down to the water quick, no matter what you're using. For example, I'll show you real quick how this D-hooker works. And Bass Pro Shops carries a few versions of their own. I pulled this right off the shelf over there. This is that D-hooker that I'm talking about. And how it works is this is going to be my fish. So my vertical jig here, this is my red snapper that's out of season or too small. And I'm going to be using my snapper setup. So I've got J-hooks on here because this is my personal rod. I'm going to take my D-hooker and that little hook of the D-hooker, I run down the back shank of the hook. And then I pull the trigger and it's going to turn that hook upside down and that fish is going to fall off the hook. So when using this D-hooker, I didn't touch the fish. That fish came out of the water and got back into the water in a matter of seconds. And if it was legal, I do it over the side of the boat, he falls into the deck and goes on the fish box. So using the proper tools is very important to make sure we're decreasing the amount of dead discards. Also venting. Venting a fish is very important. Whenever you're out there fishing past 3 atmospheres beyond 90 foot of water, you have to vent your fish. To properly vent your fish, what you're doing is you're letting that built-up pressure release so that fish can swim back down the bottom. If you're out there fishing in deep water and you reel up a fish real quickly, it comes up and it's all bloated, its skin is sticking out, its eyeballs are bugged, sometimes it's got something hanging out of its stomach or out of its mouth. Whatever you do, you never want to poke that thing hanging out of its mouth. You've got to properly vent the fish. And in order to properly vent the fish, all you're going to do is puncture the swim bladder so that way the built-up pressure can escape. And I'll show you using this pinfish. This fin on the side of the fish, that fin right there, that's called the pectoral fin. If you put the pectoral fin of any grouper or snapper species, that pectoral fin gives you a perfect target. Once you lay it down the side of the bait, it gives you a perfect target to put that venting tool in. A venting tool is simply a large gauge needle or something thin that's going to be able to puncture that air bladder and release that built-up pressure. Bass Pro has some venting tools over here, and I can show you after the seminar where those are. You should definitely have some venting tools in order to, if you catch one of those big fish, to vent it quickly and get it back down to the bottom. So to answer your question, yes, that is a bit. But that's only because I'm properly handling the fish, and on my personal tackle, I personally choose to do that. But when you rent a rod, yes, you do get circle hooks, that's the law.
Does the double snell work with the circle hook?
A double snell works with a circle hook. A circle hook, the difference between a circle hook and a J hook is that circle hook, when you come up, when a fish bites that circle hook, it runs. You're going to slowly apply pressure, and that circle hook will set itself on the side of the fish's mouth. A J hook, when you feel that bite, you got to set the hook. But a circle hook works fine in a double snell rig. You just got to slow down a little bit. When you feel that bite, you slowly get pressure, and once you feel the fish, then you can start reeling quicker.
So if I do a 12-hour mangrove trip, how is the renter real pattern?
We'll provide a double snell circle hook rig. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, for kingfish, when you're fishing, when I was trolling, I wouldn't use wire because typically when you're trolling, you're moving fast, there's air bubbles. As long as you're using like 60-pound leader in between that planer and spoon, you don't need wire. But when you're flatlining for kingfish or live bait trolling for kingfish, yeah, I use wire. Typically, I'm using like a number 4 wire, around 44 pounds to start. If the water's really clear, I might drop it down a little bit in size of the wire. If the water's a little bit murky, it might come up a little bit in size of the wire. But yeah, you definitely want to use what's called a stinger rig, which is about anywhere from 12 to 18 inches of wire and a swivel. And then you have a small J-hook, typically a 2-aught J-hook. And then about 6 inches, you have a treble hook, typically a side hook or treble hook. The distance between your J-hook and that treble hook changes depending on the size of the bait you're using. If you're using a small thread fin like I showed you before, if I'm using a thread fin like this guy, that J-hook's going to be in the top of his nose. That treble hook wants to be in that back half of the fish. So I'm only going to have maybe about 4 inches between my J-hook and treble hook.
You all buy them or you pre-make?
I personally pre-make my J-hook or my stinger rigs, but Bass Pro Shops sells pre-made stinger rigs. That makes it a little easier because to make a stinger rig, you got to do that haywire twist. And it's not super easy, but once you get it down pat, it's very quick and you can make them very easily. But it definitely takes a little bit of practice to get it right. And a lot of practice, yeah. But this time of year, you gotta have that flat line out. What I would do is I'd use a spinning reel, like a 4000 series spinning reel, or a 4-aught reel, and you just have that flat line casted out while you're bottom fishing. If you're drift fishing, you don't need anything. You can just put out a dead bait. And as you drift around, that dead bait's going to be up on the surface, acting like a live bait. If you're anchor fishing, you typically would use a balloon. And that balloon will carry that bait away from the boat with the wind. And that dead sardine or dead breadfin will be bouncing in the wave action, looking like it's alive. Or you can use a live blue runner. We've caught kingfish on squirrelfish, on lizardfish, on grunts. Just about any type of live bait works as well. But if you don't have live bait to start, even a dead breadfin, there's no excuse not to have a stinger rig flat line out for this time of year, because you're just simply missing kingfish if you don't have that flat line out. That answer your question? Robert? Well, I don't fish off of pier or skyway too often, but when flipper comes to bother us on the boats, the best thing to do is move, and hopefully those dolphins won't follow you. But there's a few different methods that people use, but technically harassing dolphins is illegal, so move. That's the best advice I can give in a seminar. Any other questions? Super Shrimp, these products are both made by Aquatic Nutrition Chum. They work very well out there. The Super Shrimp is one of my favorite chums to use when I'm hog fishing. Super Shrimp, it's Super Shrimps, but I can't bring myself to say that for some reason. It's a pellet, and it's a very hard pellet that sinks to the bottom very quickly, and it allows that pellet, just watch out for that camera, man. Thank you. So that pellet drifts to the bottom very quickly. That way, this chum will get to where you're fishing. So often, I'll see someone who's at their bottom fishing, and they're throwing oatmeal on the surface or powdered chum on the surface. Well, that's not hitting the bottom until 100 yards away from your fishing spot. So you're actually attracting those fish away from your fishing spot. So a pellet like Super Shrimps really works because it sinks quickly and it actually gets down to the bottom where you're fishing. The Snapper Up is a powdered style chum, and that would work in the bay or in the keys on the keys on the coral reefs. Here, when we're out there fishing for snapper in 80, 100, 120 foot water, you mix the snapper up with water and it becomes like a sand. And then you can put it in a chum bomb, or you can make a chumsicle with it, and that'll get that chum down to the bottom where you're fishing. Or if you're king fishing, we were asking before about mackerel fishing, you could use this stuff. You could anchor up on some hard bottom, have a bunch of dead whitebait, cut up some dead whitebait, throw that out, throw this out on the surface, and that's how some of those king of the beach guys, some of those tournament winning kingfish are caught, because they anchor up, they establish a chum line, and they chum in those bigger fish. So this would be a great use for that. But as far as bottom fishing is concerned, I cut up a bunch of bread bins, cut up a bunch of shrimp, mix this with a bunch of the water. It comes with benzene oil in the bag. Mix that all together and then put it in a brown paper sack. And then take a line like this and just put a swivel on it and put 3 or 4 leads on the line, no leader, no hook, and then put that paper bag over that ball of leads, put a rubber band on top of it, and then drop it down to the bottom. Once it hits bottom, you just move your rod tip up and down a few times, that paper bag breaks up and it lets the chum out, and then you reel up the paper bag and you're set up there. You can take the trash out of the water, or you can make a chum signal, which is just a solo cup. You fill that up with the chum, you put it in your freezer the night before, you drop a lead in there with a piece of line loop coming out of it, and leave that out of the top of it just like a popsicle, and then the next morning you have a frozen solid cup with a piece of monofilament coming out of it. You tie your main line to that with the lead, drop it down to the bottom, work the lead up and down a few times. The chum breaks up and melts, and it makes a good chum cloud right below the boat where you're fishing. So that's how I use those chums. What was the question over here? We don't chum on the party boats because we're blessed to have a lot of chummers on board. When you're fishing on a personal boat with 4, 5, 6 lines in the water, that's when you would chum. Or when the bite is slow, that's when you would chum. On a party boat, you're fishing with 20, 30, 40 other guys. So all those baits going to the bottom creates enough smell, gets those fish chummed up plenty. Plus, you've always got, even on the most advanced English trip, you've always got a few people who are learning, which isn't a bad thing, but they hook their bait wrong or something like that, and they're just feeding the fish. And that chumps the water for you as well. So on a party boat, there's no need to chum because we have more people fishing. But for example, on a party boat, if we're fishing for hogfish and we got 20, 30 people on board, we'll chum with the super shrimp. We went through about 10 or a whole pallet full of this aquatic nutrition chum just in the last like 8 to 10 months. So we do chum quite a bit, but most often we chum aboard our party or our private charter boats, like the Hub, the Flying Hub 2, the smaller boats that have less people fishing. That's when we'll utilize the chum more frequently. Or when we're kingfishing, like say on the 10-hour all day, when we're the kingfish are around real thick, we'll use that aquatic nutrition chum to get those kingfish coming into the boat.
How's the blue runner play?
The blue runners are a bait fish. They hang out around the Egmont key channel is a great way to get them. The Skyway, that area, they run pretty well all year. And this time of year, in the spring, those big fish like the greenbacks, the breadfins, the goggle eyes, they get a lot bigger and move offshore. The bait hasn't been super thick yet. It was starting to get thick there towards the end of February, then we started getting these cold fronts and kind of broke them up, stunted the growth a little bit, but I have a feeling by the first week, second week of April, we'll see those big bait schools again. And some of those big bait schools will be blue runners. But definitely a little early for those huge half-acre size schools of bait fish near shore. But they're coming soon.
Minimum size conventional trolling.
Yeah, minimum size conventional reel while trolling, it really depends on what your application is. For example, if you're trolling on your own boat and you don't have 30 other people on board who want to go bottom fishing, you can troll much slower, and this 50 LD Saltiga would be a big enough reel for trolling. But if you're on a party boat where 90% of the people on board want to go bottom fishing, they don't care about trolling, you got to use a bigger reel because your boat's not going to slow down. You got to be able to reel in that fish while the boat's moving. unless you hook a big smoker kingfish or you got a billfish tail walking away from the boat, slow down for that. But typically on a party boat, your minimum size for trolling would be like a 9-aught reel would probably be your best application with 80 to 100 pound main line. That would be what I use personally for trolling. If I'm going out in the blue water and I'm fishing for like big wahoo or bill fishing, then I would use one of those internationals. 2-speed international works really well for the wahoo because you got a lot of line capacity, you got a lot of drag, and if that fish is coming at you, you can go into high speed. If he's running away from you, you can go into low gear. A 2-speed reel is definitely preferred when you're trolling. But if you're just on a short trip and you want to go after some mackerel, a 6 or 9-aught reel will work fine. To troll for those bigger game fish like wahoo, etc., you want to get into blue water. So 35, 40 miles is where you start seeing those nicer fish. But I mean, 2 or 3, 39 hours ago, we caught a tuna and we could still see the buildings on shore. So you never know. It's really unique. I mean, I remember as a kid when I was like 14 years old, we caught sailfish 3 miles off the beach trolling for mackerel. Those fish do come into shore. It's a lot more infrequent, but you can catch nice fish near shore. But typically, that nice deep blue water, 120 foot plus, is where you start seeing large numbers of those game fish. Triple tail, we're seeing a lot of those around the crab pots inside Tampa Bay. Triple tail fishing is good through the whole summer, but it's really good in the spring. Mahi, dolphin fish, we don't see those until the water starts warming up. Late May, June, July, they'll start showing up and they'll be here through the summer. Most of the time we see mahi further from shore in that blue water, 35, 40 miles, etc. But you can sometimes see them come inside. But the trick to the mahi is once you hook one, don't take it out of the water. It's really amazing. If you've been fishing in the Keys or if you've been out in the Dolphin to see that school of dolphins, once you hook one, the whole school will stay around that one dolphin. So if you got 30 people on a party boat and we're working together, people are listening, one guy can hook a dolphin, reel it to the boat, and hold it, and everybody else can start casting and catching the dolphin. The next person to hook one reels it to the boat, stops. That guy who was waiting pulls his into the boat, unhooks it. That second guy is holding his near the boat. Then a third guy hooks up. That second guy can pull his in the boat. But if one guy gets overexcited and pulls that fish into the boat early, the school disappears. That's really, really unique. So you gotta work together and listen to the captain and crew. And if it's done right, you can capitalize and catch a bunch of mahi. Now that system that I just discussed is for chicken dolphin or schoolie dolphin, the smaller ones that are just legal up to about this size. The big bulls will travel in pairs sometimes, but most of the time those are loners. You'll see those kind of streaking up to the boat and you can cast out a pitch rod. Very important spring, summer, and fall to have those pitch rods ready for cobia and for dolphin. For dolphin, you're just using a spinning reel with typically braid, so you have a lot of line capacity, and then a long fluorocarbon leader and just a bare like 3-aught hook. That way when you see the dolphin come up, you can hook a chunk of thread fin or a live shrimp or throw a little yellowtail bait, and those dolphin will smash that. And then as far as a cobia, like a 4-aught conventional reel or a larger 5, 6, 7,000 series stinger reel, and you want to have about 50-pound fluorocarbon on that with about a 5-aught circle hook. You can tail hook a kingfish and cast that where the cobia is gonna be. If you cast it towards the cobia, he's gonna spook. Also, one of my favorite cobia jigs I found here at Bass Pro Shops, this bucky eel, a bucktail, just the white, and the white head is a bucktail. They work really well for cobia, but cobia's favorite bait is an eel. And so this white bucktail with that green eel is a deadly cobia bait. So I had this rigged up on a spinning rod in case I saw a cobia as well. So important to have that stuff ready, because if you're not ready, you're going to miss those fish. What was your question?
Hogfish, 20 to 40 miles out.
Hogfish, that's a broad one. But hog fishing, typically anywhere from about 30 to about 70 foot of water is where you catch them the most. So anywhere from about 9 to about 25 miles is where you're going to see the most amount of hogfish. Hogfish like rock piles, ledges, flat hard bottom, and they're cruising along that area looking for crustaceans, shrimps, crabs, whatever it may be to feed on. So when we're fishing for hogfish, live shrimp, fiddler crabs, sand fleas are all really, really good baits to use. You can also use the naked ball jigs, which is just simply a ball jig with a chain and a little fly. The naked ball jigs work well for the hogfish, and typically for hogfish, less is more. You want to start with like 30-pound fluorocarbon leader. Generally for hogfish, my setup's going to look something like this. Either around a 4000 series spinning reel or a very small jigging rod with a really sensitive tip. And for the hogfish, you want something that's going to have enough backbone to fight those fish, but something with a very sensitive tip so you can feel that bite. And you want it to be nice and light. The Bull Bay rods are one of my favorite. St. Croix makes some nice stuff too. There's a lot of different custom rods you can use. Braided line is preferred, so you have that sensitivity, but you have to use about 20 to 30 feet of fluorocarbon top shot / leader. And typically, like you'll see on this spinning reel, it's full of braid, but then this hole from almost the first eye all the way to the hook is all fluorocarbon. And that's a little short. Typically, you're using a little bit more than that. And that fluorocarbon is going to hide that braid from the fish. And you're going to use a couple different techniques. You can use just jig heads like this. You can use the naked ball jig I showed you earlier. Or you can use a light knocker rig like you see here. The knocker rig setup is going to be a little bit more difficult to use. The jig head or the naked ball jig is a little bit simpler, but the knocker rig setup really allows you to dial in on those fish. Because a knocker rig is basically this sled free spinning up and down your main line, and as that bait goes to the bottom, it creates drag, so it pulls that lead further and further from your hook. And the further your lead gets from the hook, the slower that hook descends to the bottom, and the more natural it appears. So if you're using a live shrimp, a medium or small live shrimp, and you've got a tail hook, and you're using a super light knocker rig, as that knocker rig goes to the bottom, that shrimp's struggling to the surface, slowing that retrieve and making it look very natural. So that's my preferred method for the hogfish. One thing you want to make sure you're doing is you don't want to use too large of a shrimp. Like a shrimp this size, way too large for hogfish. If I had a bigger shrimp, what I would do for the shrimp is just tear the head off the shrimp and tear the tail, cut that right in half. So I just have a little chunk of shrimp. My favorite piece is just a little bit of meat in the tail, because that tail is going to help slow the descent of the bait to the bottom. And then this would be rigged on that knocker rig setup. Just like if you were rigging a soft plastic bait. The hook right down the bottom and at the base of the tail. So it looks like just the bottom half of a shrimp. And then as that goes down the bottom, hogfish are going to see it coming because it's going to bottom very slowly. Typically, you're going to get hit well before you get to bottom. Now, this lead you'll see here is a pretty large lead. That's about a 1 ounce lead, and it's rigged up right now for, I was doing a hospitality trip with some less experienced anglers, so I was using a little heavier lead to make it easier to feel the bite. It was also a little rough that day, so it makes it a little easier to feel the bite with the heavier lead. But when you're hog fishing, you want to use a very small lead. Smaller is better. The lighter the lead, the slower the descent, the more natural it looks. But it also makes it much harder to feel the bite. So hogfish is very challenging because you got to use light tackle, you got to use light line, you got to use light lead, and you got to use these baits like fiddler crabs or shrimp that are very easy to pull off the hook. So it takes a lot of practice and a lot of skill. Hogfish are always one of the last species to bite. So you get up on a spot, you start fishing, and you start catching fish. Everybody's catching fish, the bite's going really good, and then you get to that point where the bite kind of slows down, and then you get to a point where you're like, all right, man, when are we gonna move? That's the point when you would drop down for hogfish. Once everything else stops feeding, that's when those hogfish will start feeding. So on a party boat, you have the ability to have everybody on the boat using squid, catching those gray snapper, porgy, sea bass, and then once all those fish stop feeding, everybody on the boat switches to shrimp. Then that shrimp smell gets going in the water, and all of a sudden someone will catch a hogfish. Once that first hogfish is caught, you better be fishing for hogfish, because in the next 15-20 minutes you're going to catch a handful, or maybe a dozen, or maybe even 2 dozen more. But as quick as that first one came, all of a sudden someone flips the light switch and the bite stops. Then you got to move to a new spot and start that whole process over. When you're hog fishing, say on an 8-hour trip, typically for hogfish you might hit 3 or 4 stops. Fishing a stop for an hour, hour and a half, even 2 hours. Because you got to get through 100 grunts for gray snapper before you catch that first hogfish. That's why this super shrimps stuff is so great, because you can use this and dump this down on your spot and feed those other more aggressive fish and get them out of the way a little bit more quickly, and that's going to get the smell of shrimp going in the water and get those hogfish ready to fire up. So if you're fishing in a smaller boat where you've only got a handful of people fishing, you've got to use something like super shrimps or a chum bomb filled with cut pieces of shrimp to get that smell going in the water and feed those other more aggressive fish to get them out of the way. Does that answer your question? Alright, we got time for one more.
So the late lead goes on a private boat, so what if you're on a party boat, party hogfish?
On a party boat, a light lead would work if you're in the right spot, which is hard to tell where the right spot will be, because so often the tide and the current are going different ways. You never know. It's very rare for the back to have the tide going right off the stern to where you can drop in the middle of the back and have it go straight off the back of the boat. That's rare. Typically the corners in the back are good spots. That's why they're so highly sought after. Because in the corners, the current could be going straight off the back of the boat, it could be going off the side of the boat, it could be going at a weird angle, and you have a greater chance of the current going the right way for you to use a very light lead. I personally typically fish the bow of the boat because all the guests, clients want to fish the stern, so you guys can have it. I'll be up in the bow casting away from the boat and casting up current. Like say the line, if the current is going right out the back of the boat, I'll stand in the bow and cast way up the anchor line. Because by the time my light lead hits the bottom, it's going to be right around my feet or just a little bit behind me. So you really got to just look at the current, see what the tide's doing, talk to the crew, and the crew will help tell you, hey, you need to go to that spot and cast here. And that's going to be how you get away with it. But ultimately on a party boat, a lot of times you're not going to be able to use a lead like this. You're going to have to use a 1/4 ounce lead or a 1/2 ounce lead and just use a little bit bigger lead. But on a private charter or on your buddy's boat, that's when you can really dial into those hogfish. That's why, like for example, this past weekend, the hogfish bite was awesome, Saturday and Sunday. And on our 10-hour, we caught maybe a 1/2 dozen, a little bit more hogfish. The half day caught 3 or 4, but the hub came in with 26. So on a private charter, you can dial into them a lot more. Because ultimately on a party boat, you got to make everybody happy. If you guys in the crowd, all of you were on a party boat, 70% of you are not going to want to sit in a spot for an hour and a half while fish aren't biting, waiting for one hogfish to bite. You know? Most of you are going to be like, dude, what the heck, let's move. So we have to try to keep everybody happy, so that's why on a party boat it's a little bit more difficult. to catch huge numbers of hogfish. Unless it's one of those days in March and April when they're biting really well, they're really aggressive, then you can catch hogfish earlier and you don't have to wait an hour and a half. So it's time of year, be in the right place, right time. But it's really frustrating. The last couple of half days I went on fishing for fun, I'm out there doing everything right that I just taught you. Doing everything right. And a guy up the way using 60-pound tests and a rental rod who's never fished before, using squid, the 6-aught hook, catches a huge hogfish. While I'm in the back using the right stuff, right technique, right bait, and I'm struggling. And I might catch 1 or 2, but they're smaller ones, you know? And on the overnight trips, we're catching 15, 16, 18-pound hogfish using 60-pound tests and a pinfish, a nice hand-sized pinfish. So you never really know. Any other questions? All right, guys. No one has really walked up the second half of the seminar, but I saw a few people walk up in the first 15 minutes. Like you back there, bud, if you want to come up and get a raffle ticket. Man, we've been here a while too. If you want to come grab a raffle ticket. Did you get a raffle ticket back here? You already got one? Everybody got a ticket, right? You've been up here. You sat through all the seminar too. Anybody else? Were you back in the seminar the most time? I saw when you walked up there, you were about halfway. Nobody can walk up at the last minute. Try not to do that. Try to keep it fair. What? Oh, you're talking about more? All right, guys, like I said at the beginning, we're going to give away the 10-hour all-day first, and then we're going to give away the 5-hour half-day. Let me see if my unbiased third party has a second here. I'm also going to stop this. Anybody know how to stop this? Oh, there's a record button. That's that one, right?
Yep.
All right.